Okay, so first off, I'd like to thank Edie and Liz for their conversation on Facebook with all the nice compliments. I hope to live up to the expectations. Secondly, Liz did bring up CrossFit, which I want to point out as a physical therapist. I really like CrossFit. I like a community coming together and supporting each other, encouraging each other, learning from each other. I like that aspect of CrossFit. I also like most of the exercises are multi-planar, multi-joint kind of functional exercises. Physical therapists, more than anything else, love function to enhance our lives. An exercise like going to the gym by yourself, doing curls. Curls are great for the biceps, but it just works the biceps. It doesn't do much else other than build it. And it's not a functional movement as much as picking up a heavy weight and putting it here. Well, my camera did something weird. All right, so picking up here and throwing up here. How often do you pick up something heavy and bring it here, or put it here, or manipulate a heavier object with multiple joints at once, using momentum, using control? That's the great thing about a CrossFit exercise, like a swing where you pop it right here. I like that because it not only teaches you, not only strengthens like the biceps, the back, the hips, the wrist strengthening, but it also gets that reflex action, gets your practiced in a motion. It's kind of like the analogy I used last time. When was the last time you jumped? If you don't practice a motion, you're not going to be good at the motion, and you're not going to have the reflexes to stabilize during the motion. So I like CrossFit for that. I use a lot of their classic exercises, especially the kettlebell exercises, for myself with workouts as well as for my patients. Granted, a heavily modified version. So that's one reason I like CrossFit. The caveat to that is to throw in there is a competitive aspect to CrossFit that shouldn't be ignored. Usually it's either HIIT training where you're doing an exercise for time. So of course that turns into how many reps can you do in a certain period of time. Can you break the record? The flip side of it is you have to do 10 sets, and let's see how much weight we can stack on, who can lift the heaviest with those 10 reps. That's a problem because of you either can do an exercise strong and fast, or you can do it pretty. And you want pretty, partially because it looks good. You want to look pretty. You don't want to look sloppy while you're doing exercise. You don't want to look like you're just flailing around trying your best. You want a smooth motion because it looks great. But aside from looking great, there's also the aspect of you want control in the motion. You want to throw around a weight and control it while you're moving. Um, that way you stabilize through the joint. That way you use the correct muscles, use the correct reflexes. You don't stress the joint, you don't stress the tendons. Because if you're doing an exercise as hard and as fast as you can, and you're getting sloppy and you're getting all over the place with the motion, next thing you know, you put stress on tendons, you put stress on muscles, and it starts to collapse. And next thing you know, you end up with an overuse injury. You end up with tearing a muscle. You end up with a rotator cuff injury. You want a controlled, easy motion. You want to do it pretty every single rep. If you stop doing it pretty, that's when you want to stop. A friend of mine owns a CrossFit gym. She's a physical therapist, and she's known as a dictator who just walks around that gym. You're doing it right, or you're not doing it right, or you're not doing it at all. You get the baby weights if you lift too much weight and you get sloppy. She is strict on that because she wants athletes. She does not want patients. So, there, that in mind, we're going to talk about today is the glutes. We're going to spend a lot of time on the booty today. So, the glutes, if you don't know, are these butt muscles right here. Today we're going to focus on, there's three, but there's two we're going to focus on called the glute max, which is the famous one because it's funny, but also the glute med, more formally known as the gluteus maximus and gluteus medius, which to me sounds like a Mel Brooks History of the World joke. Pause for laughter from the older folks. The younger folks, Google that. It's a funny sketch on History of the World. That being said, I'm not going to call it that the whole video. I'm just going to call it the glute med and the glute max, just because it just sounds less ridiculous. The glute max, its primary job is as a hip extensor. It kicks that hip backwards. That's important because when you're walking and when you're running, you take a step and then you extend that hip backwards to stabilize through here. It's the power. It's actually what propels you forward while you're running, while you're walking. We always think about when you're running, you think about that leg going forward, but in reality, it's the push of that glute that propels you forward. You'll especially note it when you're going up hills. In fact, that's one of the things that kills people with hills is they trash their quads. And the reason they trash their quads is if you're not using the glute, you're using the quad. And this muscle is impressive. It looks great, but it's not huge, it's not dense, and it doesn't have that much endurance as the glute. The quad will work for a while and then it'll get exhausted. But with used in conjunction with a strong, stable glute, you can power up hills much more effectively. Plus, your sprinting speed will be a whole lot better because you're pushing through two giant muscles as opposed to just the one. So the stronger the glute max, the more effective you will be on your running. Flip that around, the glute med, its job is the Jane Fonda motion of kicking your leg out to the side just like that. We all have seen that, we all know that, and we've seen that in the videos, and it makes an impressive little thing, but its functional purpose, unless you're walking sideways, it's not going to be to kick it out. Instead, it's to stabilize on one leg. This is the muscle that keeps you from collapsing down and falling over like that. This is the muscle that stabilizes you when you're on one leg. That's important because all walking is standing on one leg over and over and over. And all running is just doing that at a quicker pace. The better you can stabilize on one leg, the better you can take a controlled, quick motion. And instead of just like a big controlled fall, you're stabilizing through each and every step. If this muscle isn't strong and stable, what you're going to end up doing instead is stabilizing through this band of connective tissue right here called your IT band. And all runners hate that word because your IT band is what gets pissed if you do a lot of stressful running. So if you're relying for your IT band for stability, it's not designed like that. It's supposed to be a reinforcing structure. It's not supposed to be a stabilizer. It's not supposed to be an active, it's supposed to be an active mover. It's supposed to be a passive one. So if this guy is doing all the work, you're going to beat it, and then it's going to adhere down to the quad. Next thing you know, you got an IT band tendonitis. And you can roll it. You can use that little foam, the little rolling pin thingy. You can use a foam roller. You can use the massage gun. And that'll treat the symptoms. But when you go running again, it'll just tighten right back up because the cause, the main culprit, is a weak glute med. And the stronger this little fella is, the better off you're going to be for injury prevention. This is also what keeps that knee from collapsing down, by the way. So if people with medial knee arthritis, it won't fix the arthritis. Once you have joint damage, there's not much you can do about it. But what this will do is reduce stress in that medial knee joint. So the more stable you are here, the less stress you'll have here and the less pain and joint restriction you'll have. So it'll actually help with that too. So if you like your knees, work on your booty. So here's how to do it. Two things to keep in mind is the glute max kicks the leg backwards, the glute med kicks the leg out. So you want to focus on that while you're doing exercises. And so I'm going to show you a few of my favorites. We're going to start with easy ones for people who just need to start working on them at the beginning. We're going to do some intermediate, and I'll show you a couple of hard ones as well. I'm going to do probably 6. The way to tell where you need to start, let's face it, unless you're actively lifting weights to build up your hips, you probably have weak hips. I've never seen a runner that doesn't have weak hips unless they were actively working on it. So if a runner came in to see me for like IT band tendonitis, the very first thing is I'm going to check a bunch of stuff. I'm going to check the hips, definitely. and we're probably going to spend a good bit of time strengthening up the glutes because they probably need it. So if you think you don't, lay on your side and kick your leg out in the air, and then have your kid push on your foot and you resist them and try not to let them push your legs together. If you can fight your kid, you have strong glutes. If you can't, and you probably can't, you're going to be very embarrassed because your kid just beat you in a wrestling match. So let's take a field trip. So, starting with the gluteus medius, one of the easiest ways to strengthen it up is to lay on your side, exactly like I mentioned before. You know, lay on your side and kick your leg up and down, focusing on keeping this leg straight. So your toes should be pointed straight forward, not up. Don't let your leg rotate or cheat. You want to keep the toes straight forward while you're going up and down. If that's kind of easy and not really straining too much, you get one of these. I love these resistance bands, big rubber band basically. You can get these on Amazon, you can get these at Target, Academy, all those places, Dick's Sporting Goods. They're really easy to find, but I like them because they offer resistance, and that kind of resistance where the farther you go, the harder it is. So it never stops being a strain. So what you're gonna do is wrap it around your ankles. And pro tip, if you were a guy and you have hairy legs, these are murder on hairy legs. So pants or socks are a big help for guys or for girls. Anyway, so laying on the side, pull against that band up and down high as you can and fight that motion. I like 2 sets of 10, 3 sets of 10. Do 10, take a break, see how you feel. If after 10 you are whooped, good, you know your number. If you're not, do 10 more, take a little break, do 10 more, see how you feel. The purpose of any exercise is to get to that point of fatigue before failure. So in other words, if you're doing an exercise and you notice after a little bit you can't keep the form up anymore, if you're cheating by rotating and you can't not cheat, then you're done. If that was 12, your number's 10. You want to do sets of 10 until that gets easy, then you can move up from there. The flip side of it is, if this exercise has what scientists call a ceiling effect. In other words, it'll take you so far and then it'll probably not take you very much farther, because after a while that muscle is going to get stronger than you can provide resistance to. That's when you bump it up and you can do the exact same motion in standing, what I call monster walks. So what you do is you put the band on the knees instead, and focus on that stability. Your knees are going to want to buckle in. All knock-kneed, you fight that and keep those knees apart. While you're keeping apart, you walk out, you walk in. There's that hairy leg thing I mentioned, ow, and in, and then back and forth. Again, 2 to 3 sets of 10. Stay in a crouch. In other words, when I'm back here, I'm like this. So my knees don't go past my toes. My knees stay about right there. All the effort's in the glutes, out and in. You do that for 3-4 sets of 10, you will really feel it start to burn after a while, which is great. That's what you want. You want to work the tar out of that muscle. The other exercise we love is a beginner exercise for the glute max, is called the bridge. All physical therapists love the bridges. We throw it at everybody. If you have one of these bands, you can do double duty and work the glute max while you're learning to stabilize with the glute med. So you get in this position here, you have the band trying to pull you knock-kneed, you pull those knees up, spread the feet apart, pull the knees apart, and keep them apart. Fight that rubber band. And while you're laying down, you lift up and down, just like that. Again, low ceiling effect on this exercise. It's gonna get kind of easy after a month or 2 of doing that, but this is a great exercise to start. 3 sets of 10.
If your booty's burning, you're doing it right. If you start getting knock-kneed while you're doing it, you can't fight anymore, that's your number of reps. Back off and stay there until you can, and then advance. So those are, well, it's actually 2 easy ones, and then the monster walks are actually an intermediate one. That's a good one to do. For the glute max, another way to advance that, you can keep the band on if you want, by the way, but squats are a good intermediate exercise to build up the glute max. It has the side caveat of also building up the quads as well as the core and the back muscles. So I like squats partially because they're versatile. You can do air squats where you just do an up and down. If those get easy, you want to add some weight, cool. You can do the classic throw some weights on your shoulders. You can hold a kettlebell in between your chest. If the kettlebell is too heavy, you can get a small child or a puppy. Those weigh like 8-9 pounds. You can hold those and do squats with those. They squirm, so be careful. If they try to get away, that's another exercise. That's plyometrics. So you can do many things with a squat. And the key to a squat is very simply, again, you don't want those knees to go over toes. That's where I see all the people screw up in the gyms, is they do a squat and they drive those knees forward. They put all the stress on the knee joints. Instead, hip width apart, sit back, and you want to feel those glutes open up when you go down. And then you want to push with the glutes on the way up. Focus on getting back there. If you want to put like a bench or a chair right there as a target, you can tap a chair or a stool or a bench while you're doing that. But you want to feel all the effort here, not in the low back, and a little in the quads, but you don't want to feel it in the knees.
Finally, one of my favorite exercises is the lunge. I like lunges because it works on that hip strength and stability. It works on the quad strength. It also kicks in plyometrics. It gets your balance. It gets your flexibility. And there's also something called it's basically the strength of a muscle throughout its entire range. So most exercises like squats or deadlifts or something like that only get a limited range of a muscle. So as a result, that muscle gets stronger, that muscle gets tighter, but it's only strong through the small range of the exercise you're putting it through. If you do a more elongated exercise where you need strength the entire range of the muscle length, you get better functional mobility, plus you get strength then. So if you find yourself, like for instance, going uphill or downhill where you have to take longer strides to achieve the same goal, you have maximum power output through that entire long stride, where if you weren't working on it, it would be through a shorter stride and you had to take smaller, tinier steps or less effective, longer steps. So plus, the more stable, if you're stable and strong way out here, you're less likely to be unstable and get injured through either repetition or you fall and you twist an ankle, what have you. So the stronger you are through an elongated motion, the better. That's where lunges really come in handy. I recommended lunges after bridges and those side kicks start to get easy. So once you're up to monster walk and squat level, that's whenever you can throw in some lunges. Now lunges, you want to focus on knee placement. So bring it forward, and when you go forward, a lot of people have that tendency to get knock-kneed. Fight that. You want to, again, keep this leg rotated out. Knees over toes, and then, bring the knee down to the floor. Again, the goal is to not let the knee go past the foot. You want the knee to stay about right there on the toes, and then come back up. My favorite way to do it is actually a stepping lunge, where I have to coordinate it. You step out, coordinate down, and back up. Reversely, that's not my favorite lunge. My favorite lunge, and I know I'm a physical therapist, which means I'm a dork for exercises, so I actually have a favorite lunge. My favorite lunge is the reverse lunge, where you step backwards and lunge down and bring it back forward. What this does is you have to balance through this leg while using it in a rigorous exercise. You have to stabilize through that glute med you were trying so hard to build up. And finally, this opposite hip flexor gets a much needed stretch and flexibility and builds up its mobility, because so many runners are tight in those hip flexors, causes all kind of problems I'll go into probably in the next video. So this is a good way to address flexibility through that hip as well. Plus, like I mentioned, all running is standing on one leg over and over and over again. The better you can reverse lunge, the better you can dynamically stand on one leg for more dynamic motions. Plus, a reverse lunge is pretty similar biomechanically to going uphill, so it's a good one to build up if you plan to do a more hilly terrain, especially a sharp hilly terrain where the inclines are pretty steep. So that's a good way to work it out. So that being said, any questions or specific concerns or any specific exercises? Hey, can you hit up some deadlifts? How do we do deadlifts? Or I love this butt exercise. Can you do a quick little mention on that? If it's complicated enough, I'll do a whole video on it. But it's a good way to kind of talk about anything that you want to talk about, including, hey, I have IT band tendonitis. What do I do? I'll be more than happy to talk about that. I probably will eventually anyway. So until then, these are some exercises you can incorporate into your workouts after your run. So get out there, go for a run, and then come home and work on your booty. Y'all have a great day.